Being tricked into believing the hardest thing there is to believe in, yourself, might be the key tool to make us scared. It's certainly been done before. It's thanks to 3 people Five Nights at Freddy's became such a thriving IP and community as it does. Obviously Scott Cawthon, but also Markiplier and MatPat. The first game theory video about Five Nights at Freddy's has been criticized to death, and undoubtedly it was not unfair. MatPat took the silly bear game and connected it to a
disgusting waste of human life, and one that I won't joke about or make
Matt
fun of.
handled the situation in the most respectful way he could, but the truth is he shouldn't have handled it at all. Sure, it's a compelling narrative and definitely did get attention and hype at a time, connecting the story of Five Nights at Freddy's to our real one, but no matter how much I'm saying this respectfully, it's completely inappropriate comparison for him to make. But I have to be honest in saying that the theory is good. But why is it? I think it's for a reason that Five Nights at Freddy's actually took inspiration for in the future, making the player part of the story. Five Nights at Freddy's 1 is a very linear game with no personality from the player character, making the streamer or gamer able to project themselves onto the character. But in universe, Markiplier is not the security guard, and making that distinction as part of the storyline is a very intriguing. But if you listen to MatPat's theory, it's not just that, it's making the main character the bad guy, the villain, the killer. This is incredibly powerful, but why is that? I think it's the drastic distinction between poor security guard who it's easy to project yourself on, a person taking a job risking their life for $120.50 a week. That's someone you can identify yourself with. Maybe not being dealt the best hand, but trying to survive and work against these 5 killer animatronics. But the twist being that you're the killer. You're responsible for these animatronics and forced to save your own skin while dooming the life of these 5 innocent lives. Even though this is not the story of Fnaf, again, it is just a theory. A theory that is not true. It later becomes part of Fnaf. In UCN, I'm convinced that UCN is a reference to this first video, and not for bad reason, because it is a very compelling narrative. But why is this twist giving such an intense feeling? Fnaf is interesting because it plays 2 stories at the same time. It plays the story of what you're experiencing and the story that has happened, the consequences of that. But Heavy Rain allows you to play yourself in the situation while it's happening. In Heavy Rain, you're playing as 4 different characters. Ethan, a father of a boy who has disappeared by a serial killer. Madison, a girl, where a string of unfortunate events leads her in Nathan's cycle. Norman, a police officer investigating the events of the Origami Killer's clues. And Scott, a private investigator paid to investigate and find the killer, but is also the killer himself. And I'm connecting this to Fnaf because instead of playing as the consequences, you're playing while it's happening. It's such an interesting part of Heavy Rain is that the time you get to spend with each character builds you trust to them. In a story-driven game, you switch protagonist. It's normal that if you do not control them, no real important events happen. You don't see Ethan sleep for 9 hours, even if he does do that, and we can imagine him doing that, because that's not something we care about. That's not interesting. But the gameplay assumes the player have this prior knowledge and assumption that the player does not do anything important when the audience isn't there to watch it. So they are playing their cards very carefully to be able to build that trust with the player and then pull the rug under you that one of the players you played as has actually been working against you. And when you finally realize that you're the killer and you are helping the killer, you also realize that you did what you were supposed to do. You followed the script. you did what he wanted. You played into his hand. Replaying the game is incredible experience to fully understand how much they actually trick you, how carefully they're playing their cards to be able to not show too much, but also not show too little to make it suspicious. Slay the Princess is a very different game from Fnaf and Heavy Rain, because Slay the Princess is more of a cosmic game. I don't know how to describe it. It's about 3 entities. You, the protagonist, and his voices trying to push him in different directions, the embodiment of experience, and the narrator fighting for life and stillness. And then the princess, or the shifting mound, the embodiment of change and adaptation, birth and death. Every decision you make is both forever impactful and inevitable and meaningless. The story is about these 2 intercontinental cosmic forces being pushed against each other like 2 giant waves of energy, without memory and only focusing on the experience. You can replay the story of the cabinet and the princesses so many times that you can cause 24 different princesses, 24 different experiences. In my opinion, most of them are not happy ones. Most of them are you treating the princess badly. That does not mean that you're a bad person or that your character is a bad person. That just means that you are giving the shifting mound negative charged experiences. The story completely shifts the way you look at the main character and opinions and decisions, and making you more confident in making those corrupt decisions. But those decisions are even more powerful in this game. Yes, obviously killing 5 children and killing children for fun, drowning them is awful, but you never get to make that decision or not. Even if they give you an option, they are leading you in a direction, or they're trying to trick you into making a decision you didn't know. But in Slay the Princess, yes, the narrator tells you to kill her, but it's implied that you're not supposed to. That killing her only causes pain for you and her. So when you decide to hurt her, it's even more powerful, because you are responsible for that decision, and it tells something about you as a person, your curiosity. Undertale is a small indie game about a kid meeting monsters that just wants freedom. Undertale is a relatively short game, but the reason it blew up in such an insane way was because Toby Fox, the creator, understands characters and people in such an amazing way. His few lines of dialogue really expresses the realistic characters' decisions and emotions. Every single character is different and tries to do what they think is for the best. If you want more of a deep dive, you should definitely watch this video. It's a very good video, and it handles Undertale in a fantastic way. But my point isn't how good Toby Fox is at making characters, but more to point out that he is good. Yet he's choosing purposefully not to give any character personality to the main character. But for good reason, not just to project yourself, the player, onto, but the possibility to play the game in 3 different ways. Neutral plays the story as neutral. Peaceful, getting the happiest ending possible by not killing any mobs and sparing all of them. Pretty hard thing to do, because you cannot level up. Or genocide. And just like they say in the video,
why would you do this? Simple. Why do you do anything in any video game? To see what happens.
You are playing with the lives much weaker than yourself and seeing the pain only for your own entertainment. Undertale is the only game so far to break the 4th wall, and making a point of that. You, the player, you are watching these people's lives, and you are not one of them. You are a real person in the real world and has the option to do anything. And you use that to play Undertale and hurt as many of these lives as you could. What does that say about you? Instead of the main character being the bad guy, you're the bad guy, the player. MouthWashing is an incredibly interesting game. It's a story told completely out of order. And in contrast to many stories like that, it does this point incredibly well executed. Telling a story with twists and turns and character development is very hard in a non-linear story, or sometimes the lack of character development. It usually crashes with telling a story out of order. To be able to trick the audience on focusing on the wrong part of the story, actually, it does this in an incredibly way, making the crash seem more important than it is. The difference between these games and the other games that I have talked about is that I'm not gonna try to explain this one in the slightest, because it's a very complicated story, so I'm just gonna assume that you know and have prior knowledge of mouthwashing. I don't want this video to be 50 hours long. The fact that you're playing as a morally grey character is clear from the beginning. The rudeness you show against Anya is unfairly treated, but not understood until you decide to replay the game. Understood in the way of understanding what a disgusting character Jimmy truly is, and how scared Anya is of him. First time playing the game, you see Jimmy as a mean but honest person. The biggest problem on the ship being Swansea. Second time, however, you realize that he is a lying narcissistic freak and treating everyone, Curly and Anya, especially, like shit. He can't take personal responsibility over any of his actions, and he's so desperate to see himself as the hero of this story. Curly is also a piece of shit, don't get me wrong, but Curly is mean while Jimmy is, again, a narcissist, straight up evil man. You want to imagine yourself as the main character, and when the main character starts acting like a not that kind person, you want to think that he has a good reason for that. And you start making excuses for him. And that's the problem. That's one of the problems mouthwashing is trying to tell us, that we shouldn't always trust our prejudgment of a situation. Just like Curly saw himself in Jimmy, he saw himself as a younger version of himself. The ship was doomed, and the people were doomed when Curly decided to prioritize Jimmy over Anya. And we as the player want to prioritize the main character over different characters, even though Jimmy is obviously the one acting in the wrong and Curly is an asshole, just like we the player is an asshole, because we did the exact same mistake as Curly does. And that reflects on us, because Jimmy wants to be the hero, but Jimmy doesn't care if he's treating people like he's the hero. The only thing he wants to do is be seen as the hero. And he's so wrapped up in this mindset that he believes that that's what Curly wants. When Curly is mad at him, he goes, "No, Curly, you don't have to be mad at me, because we can both be heroes." But just like Curly, you can't fix this. Ever since I was a kid, I have been obsessed with scary stories. And it's a weird sense of control you get over your emotions. But the more horror stories you read, the less scared you get of them, the more used to them you get. Or that was the case until I heard one very interesting story. And it's interesting because it's not very graphical at all. It's about a man walking past a house, and inside of the house he sees a shadowy figure. The windows are all taped up, he cannot see it. So he peeks through the keyhole and he sees a ballerina dancing. He thinks she is very pretty, but he shakes himself off and he heads to work. He works for the day and then he goes home. Then the next day he goes to work again and he walks past the same house and he sees the house and he sneaks up and he watches through the keyhole and he sees the ballerina dance across the room. And he thinks, again, it's so pretty, and he's just like, this is such a nice routine. But he shakes himself off and he goes to work again. Then the next day he goes past the house again and he walks up to it and he looks through the keyhole, but instead of a ballerina dancing, all he sees is just red. He doesn't really understand what was going on, but he ignores it and heads off to work. Then when he gets to work, he talks to a colleague and he says, "Oh, you talk about the ballerina with red eyes?" It is such a stupid story, but it used to freak me out so much as a child. But it is not particularly scary. Nothing graphical happens, but it doesn't even end with him getting hurt. He only gets watched, but I used to get so freaked out. with this story. Even though this story doesn't creep me out anymore, and would probably not creep out any adult, I'm bringing this up because it creeps me out that it isn't much different from characters I can see and be scared of in these games. Because it's someone that is morally corrupt, that I want to relate to and want to see myself in, but is doing something bad, and it makes me creeped out this false comfort you can feel in a main character. And this is a clear depiction of when a main character is simply in a dangerous situation, but is not aware of it, and we as the audience haven't realized it. But it's even more disturbing when the danger isn't from the outside, but is the main character. But now I'm speaking out of stories in general, but the truth is that it's much more popular in one form of media than any other. It's more popular in games. In this whole video I've talked about games, and I think games is such a special media because it makes us, the audience, ignore a blank slate. But maybe we shouldn't project ourselves onto the point of view person. Playing with our assumption of what a game usually is and how a game should be told is extremely powerful. Because maybe the scariest thing we can imagine is the fact that we are not as good people as we wish we were. That the biggest mistake we did was not trusting someone that betrayed us, but trusting ourselves and getting that trust broken. Even if it's a children's story, they're playing with morality and justice, because no matter who you decide to spend your time with, you are stuck with one person, yourself. And that might be the worst thing in life. I know what you're thinking, Ian, you gotta stop fucking leaving us on such a high note. I know. I'm spreading the happiness like a plague. If you want to feel better, I'm sure this video will do the trick for you. Thank you for watching all the way till the end. I don't think you realized how rare it is for an audience member to do that. But thank you. That's it. That's the end of the video.